I got involved in this project to make a section in Europe in 1972. McClure proposed to give the students the possibility to go for a certain time to Europe. He said, when I do that, then I decided a location in a country where they don't speak English. And second, not a touristic hotspot. And it should be in center of Europe. 1 year later, springtime 1973, he called me and said, I come to visit you in my hometown in Laufen in Switzerland next day. We had a drink in the library of my father. And then Dean McClure said, I have bought a villa in Genoa, not touristic hotspot, not English speaking, and almost in the center of Europe. Switzerland is more in the center, but Genoa is not so bad. And then he started to sketch spontaneously, very quick. He explained us what the villa is, how big it is, and what's the organization of the villa. It was really nice to see how quick he made this. A few minutes, zack, 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 and the sketch was finished, and the discussion went on. And almost every year I went 2 times for the review of the project. Being completely out of the office, it was a big break. The discussion was about architecture history, art, relationship, new, old, really a nice discussion with the students and with the professors. Very interesting was also to discuss Italian culture, because my mother language was Italian. Therefore, I could also explain to the student a lot of things I knew from my language. I was not sure if I learned more from the students as the students were learning from me. For me, it was really a great time, and always I was enthusiastic when Cesare Ferra called me to come down to Genoa. I think it's a great thing, and I always have tried to convince the student to go, when I was in Clemson, to go to Genoa, to go and visit the country and work in the country. That's very healthy.
Harlan, at one point in his career at Clemson, he decided he wanted to do an overseas program, which was not common back in the early 70s. He had a connection with Cesare Ferra, and so Harlan decided Genoa was the perfect place to have the school, and Cesare was instrumental in finding this villa, so they started negotiations with the owners to buy the villa. And so that all came to fruition, and then the first class came over here, but they had a lot of work to do in the villa. The villa hasn't changed a lot, only in minor ways. The basic structure is the same. Very early on, they changed all the bedrooms, into the rooms for the students, the bathrooms, and the remodeling of the kitchen area, the dining area, and all that to make it suitable for school thing. The garden was just a driveway. So that was one of the first things they did, was start fixing the garden up. And the grotto was all overgrown, and they cleaned all that up and so forth. So it's just been improvements over a long period of time, but not major changes. It looks wonderful now. Harlan and I married in 1977. It was a second marriage for both of us, but he was certainly my Prince Charming, and he brought me here for a honeymoon, and I thought I was a princess coming to this beautiful place. I fell in love with Genoa and with Italy. We came very frequently. We spent a lot of time here and always felt like this was our second home. The staff here are just fantastic. And Cesare was so instrumental in helping Harlan get everything going. And Harlan really was passionate about this school and the program and wanted to give students the opportunity to have an overseas experience even after he was gone, and apparently is happening, because today all the students that I talked with said they were having the best experience of their life.
I've been invited to Clemson several times. It's really like being a home away from home, which is exactly the same spirit we have when we host the Clemson students here. To explain the villa in a few words is impossible. It's like a philosophy, and it's hard to explain if you don't experience for at least some period of time. Otherwise, the risk is that you only touch the surface of the experience, and therefore you do not fully understand the importance of the Charles Daniel Center in Genoa and how much it means to thousands of people. So the idea is living here, but like you would live if you were a guest in an Italian family. Having someone who really cares for you and tries to do the best to have you had the best semester possible. This is a very beautiful place, it's a unique experience, and we can tell that people change after spending a semester here. You would go out on a trip, and then when you are exhausted after 10 days traveling around, you may end up saying, I can't wait to go back home. And you say, home where? At the villa in Genoa.
I came back to teach right when the debate about Genoa was bubbling up, and I was delighted when Dean McClure asked if I would like to do this. I was excited about the generosity of the Clemson Architectural Foundation to have purchased and set up the administration of what we now think of as the villa. But most of all, I was really enthusiastic about getting to know Cesare Ferra, the founding director of the program. When I was getting ready to leave, Dean McClure brought me into his office, told me his thoughts about what a residential learning environment was like. His point was that this is a chance to teach and travel with and dine and sit casually in discussion with the students. There are only a few of us who are doing the teaching, and then all of the students are living right there with us. And every evening, and actually every day after lunch during siesta, this would be the setting for all of us to sit around and discuss not only what was going on that day, but also the calendar. Evenings in the villa around the dining table were extraordinary. Learning architecture is what we call learning through discovery. It's not just making buildings. It's the art of designing, building, and sustaining vibrant communities. Teaching and learning in another culture is fascinating for this because we aren't just assuming that we know all the background and cultural mores that go into that kind of participation. The other part of that is reflection. It's the discovery of what are the issues and problems within a design project, but it's also personal discovery. Time is always important. It's perpetually changing. And time over the dinner table is one of the great lessons that we learn in a place like Genoa, in a participatory teaching and learning environment.
We were the first class in Genoa. Getting to know your fellow classmates at a different level, living with them 24/7 was quite an experience. Our class really became like a family, and we just had our 50th reunion, and almost everybody from our class came, and it was like picking up where we left off 50 years ago with our classmates. We were very tight. The experience of traveling around, we'd travel in 7 countries on the motor scooter. That probably sticks out as much as anything, as experience of seeing old buildings, historic structures in Europe, the scenery of Europe. It taught me that you really got to experience architecture, not just look at it in pictures and books. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina. I grew up in the 50s and 60s there, and there was no good modern architecture there. So seeing something really good in a historic setting really set me on a path of trying to do good modern architecture that fit into historical environments. I really fell in love with trying to do that in the Charleston area, which is very historic, of how do you design a modern building that is a really good modern building, but yet that's a good neighbor to the historic structures that are near there.
I started studying there in the fall of 1978. It was a pretty incredible experience. We traveled extensively in Western Europe. The fact that I could walk through Florence or Rome or Milan and see a building and say, oh, that's by so-and-so, and that was a great experience to see the actual buildings that I had spent all this time memorizing and studying. We got to be very good friends. We used to play ping pong in the garden, and the table was not the only surface you could play it off of. So international rules prevail was the line, and we played it off the building, off the ground, and it got to be pretty wild, but it was a lot of fun. And we all got together for the 40th anniversary in Charleston, and it was like within 30 minutes you felt like you were back at the villa. It was an opportunity to really expand my skill set. It gave me confidence that I could navigate foreign languages, foreign places. It was an amazing experience, life-changing experience.
I live really nearby, and so they are neighbors to me. I've seen that what happens mostly for the student is that after a few days they get very acquainted to this fantastic place. I think that generally speaking, this is a good chance to stay, relax and study. Genova, being an Italian European town, has this incredible weight of history on its background. So for an architect, I think that this provides a unique chance to design in a historical context. Context is so important in our job. The job of an architect is modifying the aspect of our reality, wherever you are. No matter if you are in the North Pole, in the desert, in Genova or in Clemson. And I think the fact that they live here, they can enjoy the spirit of the town, is a great help for the student to understand better how to do this and how to experience this in the design studio. Every semester is different, and every semester there is a moment where you can establish a good relationship with the students, where you understand that the true meaning of teaching is giving and taking. And this is beyond any professional or academical argument, is something that makes life better for sure.
I started teaching in Genoa in the fall of 1984, and we were there through the spring of '85. It was a great time. Each semester we had roughly 21 and 22 students. Each department here at Clemson School of Architecture was represented. In Clemson you have elective classes in the morning and then studio classes in the afternoon. Well, in Genoa, everything is in one spot. Our day would be getting up, do the famous focaccia run, followed by strong coffee, espresso coffee, a light breakfast, go to studio, about 11:30 in the morning. Angela was a chef, and she prepared a beautiful lunch for us. And so we would be smelling it and, like, how quick can we get out of studio or doing what we're doing in our class or whatever, go on down. So that was a great way to start the day. Then in the afternoon, it was in the studio doing design projects. And usually the hours were completely different because we would also visit Genoa, the city, walk the streets, do sketching. This one is looking out the window at the villa. And every student typically who goes to Genoa draws this view. Our studio would pick up around 4 o'clock. It would continue constantly to about 10 or 10:30 at night. You're going to be there for basically a semester, so you want to get as much out of it as you can.
I went to Genoa in 1986. To get there, it's my first time really on a plane, first time on a boat, first time on a train through the Swiss Alps, and then to climb the mountain to get to the villa. The villa was a grand Italian piazza to me, so it was like a home at home, but we knew we had serious things that we were doing also in the home. So we had a chance to really explore the whole region. Then we brought that back to the studio to incorporate into projects. Going to the village of Ronchamp, where Le Corbusier designed the chapel there, the Ronchamp Chapel. Being able to be there for the whole day, it allowed me to hone my way of discerning the coordination between my eye and my hand. And then to be able to sit there and to see the change throughout the day and to draw and sketch, it was very meaningful for me. What I liked about the staff there, they created spaces for us to get to know the people who were in the community. Before I went there, I always had a sense that I was part of a larger community, that my community was bigger than the town or the city or even the country I'm from. That was the first country that I spent a whole semester, maybe 3 or 4 months in, and immersed myself in. Not only was I in studio and living in a villa, but I had a chance to make friends outside of that. So I think the relationships with the people who worked there and the people that I met just in friendship stayed with me for quite a while.
I can easily imagine how it can be for the student to be here at the villa, because everything is about learning here. It's learning in sharing time together and sharing experience together. Let's say that after 50 years there are a lot of small traditions. The one I like more is just the one of taking the picture on the main stairs of the villa at the villa party. Every semester it's incredible because it's different, faces are different, but the eyes seems always the same. The same curiosity, the same wish and desire to discover new things. It's so amazing when sometimes somebody that was here maybe 10, 20 years ago come just to visit the villa and just go in the picture, just look for his own face or the face of his friends and so on. It's really amazing tradition and I really like it. Not just a didactic experience, student experience, but really a life experience. I think it's something that they will keep in her memories even later.
When we first got there, the villa had just changed hands. It was just purchased by the CAF. So when we walked in the front door, there was nothing inside. Well, the first thing we had to do was go out and buy furniture. And so we had to buy the desks that are still there. We bought those desks, we put them together. And so we had to furnish the villa. I remember Dr. Farah, who was the director, he had a graduate student with a tiny little Fiat 500, and he would ferry us from nearby the train station to the villa with our bags and whatnot, and we would pile into the villa and just look around like, where are we, what's going on? But given we were the first Americans in the city, it's not a tourist city. Some neighbors got wind that we were there, and so they became our sort of tour guides and friends for a while, and they don't have this now, but we had a Fiat van. So we didn't travel by train. We all loaded up in the van and we went to lots of different cities. So any kind of foreign travel, regardless of how it's done, broadens your experiences. And I think that carries through your life regardless of what your profession is, and in particular I think in architecture. There's practical differences regarding our own profession and more broader differences that carry on throughout your whole life.
I didn't have a semester on main campus before I came to Genoa. The villa was the first experience I had of Clemson. For those of us who were introduced to Clemson via Genoa, it's a special place for that reason. Like the biggest thing for me studying there was learning to sketch. We were required to sketch like nonstop. I just remember I carried a backpack with a little tripod stool. Everywhere I'd go, I'd set that thing down and I'd sit and I'd sketch it. Going to the Duomo and spending 2 hours sitting there sketching different elements of it, you become part of it. You sit there for a while. You're very much part of the moment. I have a bunch of photos from that, but I don't look at any of them. I don't even know if I have them anymore. But the sketches that I made while I was there, those are the memories I have. I've got one I hang on my bulletin board still. It has a big paragraph at the bottom of his critique of the sketch. And I love that it's got that part with my memory of being there. And it's a way now when I teach, I communicate with students at a desk crit, and it gave me that ability to communicate. That part from Genoa has carried forward for me as something I still use.
La saluto tanto. Grazie, thank you. She's saying that you say to you hello and she thanks. Allora, mamma, cosa ha voluto dire la Clemson per te? I asked, what did Clemson mean for her? when she was more younger, when she was young.
Nella Clemson voleva dire gioventù, ero in mezzo a sti ragazzi, io sembravo la loro mamma. Erano ragazzi, erano molto allegri e ci ho lavorato tanto volentieri. È il lavoro più bello che mi è capitato.
She said that she was in the middle of young people. They were very allegri, happy. They were happy. And she said she was very happy to work at Clemson University. And also that it's the best job she did in her life.
Ma era tutto allegro.
Everything was
Erano giovani.
They were young and the atmosphere was allegra, very
una bella atmosfera.
friendly. Una bella atmosfera, a very nice atmosphere, she said, in this year. It was 17th, I think.
I was 10 years old when this program started. My father was the director of this center. I remember my father that for the first group that came here back in 1973, he got the news a few weeks before the program started. So he went to a shop to buy beds and all the first things the student needs. And while they were here, they were like living in a grotto because the villa was almost in ruins. But they like it a lot. And then they had funny stories. I think they will tell you about the cook and about the first villa life. So these are, I would say, good memories and good friends that I still have, and I'm proud of having those guys as friends. Well, it's always a challenge having new students, but and each group is one different from the other. Since they are young, they're like a sponge and they're open to the news experience. So it's great to talk with them and to deal with them. But what is unique, I think, is the opportunity having a resident professors, a local professor that they can introduce to the Genoese life and to the European life. In fact, the villa is a place from where the students they travel all over Europe. And I always tell them, go out of the villa after the class because it's very important to experience architecture. Architecture needs to be lived because of the pattern, because of the smell of the building, and because of the environment. So experience the architecture, I think it's a unique experience for them.
Life in the villa has been fantastic to share with my family and also as a professor in residence. To live there as a family, it was really an amazing experience. We've had the fortune of not just being there for 1 year or one stay, but we've returned. And in a way, both girls, I think, have felt like they've kind of grown up there, which is nice. It's very special. When you're there, it's like it's yours. No one ever somehow feels like they're living in someone else's place. It's always theirs, you know. So there's somehow the way that that place transfers the ownership of the experience to everyone as an individual is amazing. Genoa particularly is a city that you get to know with time and moving through it. And the more that you do that, its textures become softer. It's a city that you can't see without spending effort. It's like something that you work for or that you get to understand through experience. And so while we're there and while you're being animated and doing things, you're able to build a different experience, a different level of trust, a different level of connection by thinking about the things that you do, not just what you say. And I find that studying architecture like that is really powerful because we're able to talk about that with the students, and I enjoy sharing those little spaces that maybe no one would see in a way, or times of like, this is cool, but if we see it next week at noon, it's really cool. So I do like those.
The first day of arrival of the students at the villa, even after so many years, is still exciting to see them ringing the bell. And as I say, oh, we're Clemson students. And they get the luggage out of the cabs, and they come always with way too much luggage. And I always tell them, you like to travel light, I see. And it's like they are moving houses. And then they walk up the stairs, and finally they say, I was told it was beautiful, but I didn't think it was like this. Then they go downstairs, and they start looking at pictures, because perhaps this is the second generation of students, so they are looking for their dad or their mom. All of this repeats itself every semester. When they come here, they still have a sincere surprise. And it is always extremely positive.
Life at the villa for me is like being in a big family. Some of the best memories are related to my work as the cook for the party. Lot of work, but when sometimes students were offering help, and so those hours of work were transformed into the beautiful moments, full of lots of suggestions and stories. Moment of sharing that I remember very deeply. In fact, I keep a good relationship with some of them, so much so that when they returned in Italy, we always meet to say ciao. The tradition that I like the most is Thanksgiving, because it refers to the big family, and because my passion for food, and I like to try and learn about new dishes and new tradition.
I'm very comfortable at the villa. It's a big family. I like having students in the villa every semester, meeting new people, without forgetting the teachers who are very dear to me. Working at the villa always makes you feel young. A big hug to the big family of Clemson.
Life in Genoa, it felt to me very authentic Italian. There was definitely a rhythm to the daily life in the villa. From the time you got up all the way through lunch, which really set the day, was the common lunch that we had. And then through the evening and the dinner and hanging out with students and my family. It took a little while, but it felt like home. We're there for school, but also it's live plus learn. So it's not just school, it's really a merging of school and life. So just being with the students and being in the villa was a great experience. And the students were really nice to my son, who was 5, 6 at the time. Clemson is very family oriented. It does have that feel here. There's very much parallels there. Learning is really important here. But I think a sense of community is also important, and Genoa provides that. But also our majors here provide that as well. So I think that Genoa, though it's older Western European city, in many ways provides a very modern experience in terms of what students are looking for today and tomorrow.
Life living in Genoa was like being in an old world civilization that had been continuous for millennia, yet walking the city with contemporary people. Genova is an authentic urban Italian port city, not polished for tourism. And Genova's coastal location was an excellent location for short travel trips. The field studies component of our study abroad programming is overwhelmingly impactful, exhausting, and exquisite at the same time. In one semester, we see 22 cities. So the villa is our home away from home, a welcomed refuge after travel, a think tank where architectural narratives become buildings and we rest and absorb our travel memories. The days are very structured, with the bread arriving early, followed by Lucia, Christina, and then Sylvia. Being on the street, walking through the city, and by chance seeing Lucia or Christina or Luca made me feel like a local. And like Genova and Clemson, it's a place of inspiration and a place where ideas are nurtured and brought to life by talented, inquisitive students. It has been a rewarding tour of duty.
I'm doing the field study, so I'm always traveling with the students. It's always an experience. Architecture is not just about like the building, it's about the life inside the building. So it's so important to be there. It's so important to see how are still used, how you experience personally the space. It's not just something that you're looking at. I thought it was so important and interesting to create in the program something so well organized, focusing on being in the sites and exploring. I'm spending a lot of time with students because it's day long, even like 4 days straight. So, and it's something that is making the difference every semester. So it's creating a new experience for each single semester, even seeing and being in the same places. This is an experience that is really 360 for the student, and it's about education, but it's also about life, it's about culture, the fact of being together. It's good to see how they are like becoming part of the program and appreciating and having more and more like curiosity and more freedom also in Genova and in general.
Growing up, I heard so many stories about Genoa and all the trips that my parents went on together with their classmates. And that was something I was really looking forward to, like creating my own memories of the trips and then the funny moments that happen with your friends. Part of my decision to come back to Clemson for grad school came from knowing that that was an option again. It was like a really close, tight-knit family, everyone being together. I helped organize the Thanksgiving we had at the villa and a white elephant party we had at the end of the semester and things like that. So bringing us all together, that was my favorite part. My fiance came to visit me in Genoa and we went to Disneyland Paris and he like panicked and he proposed to me in the queue line of Pirates of the Caribbean. So that's a little bit of a joke in the villa too. After that, we went to Genoa and spent time around the villa and showing him and showing my parents again. We found their picture on the wall, which is crazy to think about. Like my mom, I'm just like following her footsteps almost exactly. It was like a full circle moment for them.